Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, The Mental Health Corner. I'm Rachel, and today we're going to be exposing narcissists in the wild. I wanted to make this series where I just happen to find people on YouTube, on blogs, on articles, or wherever else I can find it to help expose narcissists. I feel like this will be very helpful for people when they're trying to look out for these type of people in their life, or they're trying to help other people to identify the symptoms that narcissists have. Now, the video that I have up is called Leaving the Cult of Happiness. It's actually a TED Talk, and I was kind of surprised to see this video in here. It's got so many thumbs up, but I just don't think people understand what's going on here. The lady who is giving this presentation, I believe she has narcissism. So let's just get right into it, and I'm going to dissect this with a fine-tooth comb or whatever, and I'm going to tell you guys why I think this person is a narcissist. So let's get into it.
The actor of Wedding Crasher fame on the podcast, and they're talking about how Tim didn't learn to swim until he was about 30 years old because as a kid he was bullied at summer camp and he almost drowned, and as a result he was deeply traumatized and terrified of water, and he just never learned to swim, and this shamed him. He felt really bad about that, but he did eventually learn to swim, and he talked about it. And on this particular podcast that I was listening to, Vince was telling Tim how inspired he was by Tim's story of overcoming his trauma and learning to swim. And I'm listening to this story with my friend, driving in the car somewhere on I-90 in South Dakota, and I say out loud, "Oh, poor Tim Ferriss. He was bullied as a kid and he never learned to swim, but then he did, and that was so inspiring." Said that out loud. My friend looks at me like, "You're a horrible person." And I'm like,
Alright, let's break this down for a second. She's an adult, acting like a 5-year-old child. Who says that sort of thing? The poor guy was bullied to the point where he was afraid to go swimming because he almost drowned. And you have to... No adult behaves this way. This is typical narcissistic behavior. A narcissist will revert to a childlike mentality whenever they're triggered. So, and in some cases, narcissists will even start talking in a childlike voice, sort of like what she's doing. And it actually frightens people because, or it makes them very uncomfortable, because here you have this adult reverting to a childlike voice, a childlike mentality, and it's very unsettling. But the issue with the narcissistic brain is that there's parts of the brain that are underdeveloped, right? And those parts are the empathy, the compassion, certain emotional things. So those things were never quite developed properly. So the brain never quite grew up in that sense. So narcissists have a very low emotional IQ. Their emotional intelligence is that of a young child, and typically that is because narcissistic children are often abused as child, usually by one or more narcissists. And we'll get later into this video to see why she is like this. What happened to her that made her this way? She kind of beats around the bush a little bit, but eventually we get to what happened. A lot of it with her has to do with shame. And a lot of times with narcissists, it is about some sort of thing that happened to him as a child, or just continuously happened to them as a child, that revolves around shame or just abuse or trauma. So, and also I'd like to point out, when I first watched this video, I thought she was a child saying this, and they were just in the back seat of the car or whatever. I wasn't fully paying attention in the beginning. So I kind of brushed this off, like, okay, stupid kid stuff. But then I came back and watched it, and I'm like, recently this happened to her? Recently she's an adult and she's behaving this way? If I was her friend, I would give her that look too. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this woman? She's got some sort of mental illness. It's not normal behavior. This woman needs help. I'm hoping that she's going to get the help she needs. I'm not sure if she is, but let's just keep watching, okay?
Yeah, I got nothing. So we just kind of turned off the podcast and sat in uncomfortable silence for a few minutes.
Yeah, I can imagine why.
It really bugged me. And when things really bug me, I need to lean into them and get in there and figure out why. So a couple days later, maybe a week later or something, I was talking with my counselor. And we're trying to figure out why I was so bothered by this. And we came to the conclusion that I got mad because not only did Tim overcome his trauma and talk about it publicly, when he did, he was met with compassion, his pain was validated, and even better, somebody thought it was inspiring. But that still wasn't good enough for me. I was like, but bullying, really? That's like an acceptable trauma. And what I mean by an acceptable trauma is, acceptable traumas are things that people can relate to. They're things that when you say them out loud...
I'm going to stop it here. The reason she got upset is because she's comparing her trauma with somebody else's trauma, and she's jealous that he's getting a lot of attention and praise from sympathetic people. That's the key issue here. That's why she was triggered. That's why she got upset. But let's keep watching.
People know how to respond. Something like a dog dying, or losing a parent, or getting bullied as a kid. We all know that those things suck.
I'm sorry if the audio is crap.
That you can go, oh God, I'm sorry.
Something weird going on with this video.
But if those are acceptable traumas, what are unacceptable traumas? Unacceptable traumas are the things that people can't or don't want to relate to. That when you say them out loud, they recoil, they grimace, they get uncomfortable. Visibly, you can see it in their face. So when I tell people that my dad killed himself, people tend to get a little bit uncomfortable. And I can see them squirm.
What are you expecting? People to just go, oh, you're so amazing for surviving that. Your father killed himself. Yes, it's horrible. People are going to feel uncomfortable. What are you expecting? Like, really?
And when I tell them that, imagine what they look like when I tell them that I was raped when I was 16. Or that I was first sexually abused when I was 5.
Of course, people are going to look at you like that. Look with shock and being upset or confusion or whatever. People are going to react to that differently than they react to hearing somebody overcoming their fear of swimming. That's normal. It's like this lady doesn't understand that. It doesn't understand those emotions. She wants attention. That's what she wants. She wants that praise and that accolade. She doesn't understand the feelings of pity, of feelings of feeling sorry, or the actual compassion coming from these people when you tell them those things. Also, is it an appropriate time or an appropriate person to say these things to? What's going on here? It seems to me that she doesn't like the kind of attention that she's getting from people when she tells them her sob story about her life. People are kind of shocked. Yeah, but in what context are you talking about this in? And yeah, people are going to be shocked because it didn't happen to them. But they are going to be sympathetic towards you about it. So, what are you expecting, lady?
So that feeling that you might be having right now, like, oh, I don't like that.
I'm not having that
That's a
feeling.
reaction to stigma. Stigma is a badge of shame.
Okay, so she thinks her sexual abuse and rape is a stigma? Okay, please explain to me how that's stigma. Do people see that you were abused? It's not something that you wear on the outside. It's not a stigma. Your abuse is not a stigma. It's not a stigma to me. Unless I go around blabbing about it and telling everybody about it. So here's part of the narcissism that's coming out in her. She thinks she's walking around with this stigma badge on her, where people are really not going to know about your abuse unless you say something about it. So how is this stigma?
And sometimes it's a literal badge of shame, like an armband.
How is it a literal badge of shame unless you have scars from the abuse? How is it a literal badge of shame? How is this a stigma? You're the one who's turning it into a stigma. That's all you, lady. She has this attitude of it's her against the world, which is pretty much every narcissist have. It's always me against the world. I was abused too as a child. I don't feel stigmatized. I don't feel like I have this literal badge of shame on me. She's, talking about this shame. This is this shame that she experienced when she was 5 is what has manifested this narcissism, and is what she's getting at here. This is the root of all her problems. That shame that she felt when she was 5 when she was sexually abused. I mean, it's not a stigma unless you tell people about it.
That a certain group of people are forced to wear, or a separate bathroom that a certain group of people are forced to use.
Oh, so now we're being segregated? How are we being segregated? We're not treated any differently in society because we were abused as children, okay? Or we were sexually abused or physically abused or whatever. We're not treated any differently. Nobody knows. You're just walking around like a normal person. I wouldn't even known about that shit about you when you walked out on stage. How are we segregated? How are we treated any differently? We're not. The only thing that we're treated differently is if we, bring that on ourselves because we have other mental issues that we need to deal with. Like for me, I have social anxiety. It interferes with my life. It does. But I don't take that as a social stigma. I don't take that as a stigma. That's my problem that I need to work on.
And other times it's more figurative. It's more social. So if we're having a conversation with someone and they bring up a subject that we're not comfortable with, we just don't talk about it. We force that person to just kind of live with that shame.
Okay, nobody's forcing you to not talk about something. This lady doesn't understand. We don't talk about this thing because we don't want other people to become uncomfortable. I don't want to see somebody get upset and uncomfortable with me talking inappropriately about my past at a time when I shouldn't be talking about it. Why bring that up? Why just bring that up unless, I'm having a conversation with somebody I trust, somebody I love, somebody I'm around all the time with, and we're just talking about it. Why bring that up with an acquaintance? Why bring that up with a stranger? Why bring that with somebody you don't really know, coworker, whatever? Why? Why would I want to make people uncomfortable? She doesn't seem to understand that because she lacks the empathy. She wants people to give her praise. She wants people to give her attention, and she doesn't understand why talking about her being raped as a 5-year-old child makes people uncomfortable. It's all about her. If you haven't noticed, it seems to be all about her instead of her making people uncomfortable. I don't like to talk about my childhood with people because I don't want them to be uncomfortable.
On their own. And they just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it.
Or see a therapist.
Sexual abuse. Rape. Mental illness. And suicide. These are my unacceptable stigmatized traumas.
It's not you are the person who made it a stigmatized trauma, lady. You. I'm not a stigmatized. I don't have a stigmatized trauma. I have all these mental issues as well. I have depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD. And I've been working on it with a therapist. I take medication. I notice some of my other personality quirks, and I worked on them. I recognized the problem, and I worked on them. And that's all you need to do. It's only a stigma. If you make it a stigma, nobody's subjugating you. Nobody's judging you. Nobody's ostracizing you. It's all in your head, lady, okay?
And they're horrible. I would not wish them on anyone. But they're mine, and I can't undo them. As much as I've tried, believe me. I've tried to just be like, la, 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 doesn't, la, 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 la. It doesn't work that way. So that reaction that I had to the Tim Ferriss show, where it was all judgy and angry and weird.
You mean childish?
That was my trauma and my shame popping up. Like,
Exactly. She recognizes that it was a trigger for her shame that she experienced as a 5-year-old child. So she reverted to that childlike mentality in order to, I guess, protect herself or whatever. This is a common theme among narcissists. They revert to that childlike mentality because of their low emotional IQ. All narcissists have a low emotional IQ. They have a childlike mentality. Some are worse than others. I think for her, it's a 5-year-old is where she stopped developing emotionally. For other people, it's like a toddler. My ex, who was a narcissist, he had that toddler emotional IQ where he would throw these ridiculous tantrums over nothing. It was insane. But let's keep watching.
some weird trauma whack-a-mole game, like, I'm perfect, but no, you're not, because the trauma just pops up at weird places and embarrasses you and makes you sound like a jerk.
Okay, so she mentioned she wants to be perfect. That's narcissistic as well. Because the rest of us know nobody's perfect. You can't be perfect. How are you perfect? I mean, come on.
And I started thinking about my reaction to that. And as I was working through it, I was thinking about how I had this need to just pretend that I'm perfect. And in Tim Ferriss's case, his trauma seemed like it wasn't as bad as mine. I got out this measuring stick and I said,
Exactly. She's comparing her trauma to other people, thinking that her trauma is worse, therefore she should get all that attention, right? That's how she perceives it in her mind, but she doesn't get that kind of attention. She doesn't get all that praise, and that triggered her 5-year-old mentality.
his trauma isn't as horrible as mine, but yet when he talks about it, he gets compassion. And when I talk about mine, overwhelmingly in the past, it hasn't necessarily been a compassionate response where people are like, oh, that was so inspiring that you...
That's the way she perceives it. People are going to, respond to different levels of trauma that you tell them differently because some are more extreme than others. You're not going to get praise when you tell somebody you were raped as a 5-year-old child. You're going to get shock and you're going to get, horror from people's faces, but they have that compassion and you're not seeing that empathy and compassion. They'll probably say something like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's terrible. How is that not compassion? That's how people respond. You can't expect, oh, you overcome that. You're so awesome. You're so amazing. That's what she's wanting here. That's what she's wanting. She wants that kind of attention, and she's getting a different kind of, a response from people that she doesn't like, and that triggers her narcissism, her childlike state.
survived all that gross stuff. It's like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Please stop talking about it. So I learned to not talk about it. And I learned to be as perfect as I could possibly be. And I pursued perfection like it was my job.
That was her mistake. Nobody's perfect. She wants to be perfect because she has narcissism. She wants to project a feeling of perfection like she thinks everybody else is doing. But that's not how you handle these problems. How you handle these problems is you go to a therapist, okay, and deal with that trauma properly.
I wore that perfection like armor.
It wasn't perfection, it was ego. It was her overly inflated ego. That's what narcissists have. They have this overly inflated balloon of an ego that's ready to pop at any second. And the instant you pop that balloon, there goes their narcissistic childlike mentality. They revert to their toddler or childlike state. They throw tantrums. They go on this, they say the crazy things that she was, saying. and then they have to blow it back up again. Like she's saying, she has to achieve this level or perception of perfection to build her ego, her fragile ego again, to the point it becomes overly inflated.
And I needed you to see the person that I wanted you to see, who I thought was perfect.
That feeds your ego.
Because underneath that armor of perfection, I was a hot mess.
Of course you are. Of course you were.
So I'm working through this, and I start to think about it. Like, why do I need to be perfect? Why is it that we have to only show this happy, shiny side of ourselves and deny that there's any problems? And, oh, if there is, like, a small problem, it's okay to talk about it in retrospect, like, after it's done. Because then we can all, like, be like, yay.
She doesn't understand that we don't talk to any old person about our negative problems. Because when you're on social media, you're not going to be posting about every little problem you're having in your marriage. You're not going to be posting about all your financial problems. So yeah, people put on this fake, false persona of, everything's perfect and happy and great and lollipops. But they don't want it to air their dirty laundry on a social platform where they have coworkers, acquaintances, family members they never see. They don't want people to know about every little intricate detail in their life. That is something they discuss with their closest friends and closest relatives. So she's not understanding that right here. And it seems like she wants to be able to talk about all of her problems with strangers and people she doesn't really know, which doesn't make any sense. I don't talk up to just any old person about, my childhood. I mean, that's just crazy.
Hey, you survived, and that's so inspiring. But it's like the Hollywood ending. We can't deal with something that's not wrapped up with a bow. So like in real life, when the protagonist dies alone in the Arctic, maybe gets eaten by a bear or has some other tragic ending, in the Hollywood version, he marries a sweetie and they live happily ever after. And I started to refer to this phenomenon as the cult of happiness. So the cult of happiness has been around forever.
It's a cult of narcissism, really.
It's just that now with social media, we can project how perfect we are.
Yeah, there is a lot of narcissism on social media. People want to portray this image of perfection, okay? And just like I said, a part of that problem is that they don't want everybody to know about their problems.
To everybody, so that I think that I'm the only person that's like sitting at home eating Pringles while everybody else is like in Italy posting gorgeous photos of themselves with inspirational quotes and all these things. And there's like,
here's her problem. She's not happy with her Pringles. That's her problem. You can be happy sitting at home eating your Pringles and watching Netflix. Why is she comparing herself still to other people and their life? This is a jealousy thing that's related to her ego and to her narcissism. Who cares that those people are in Italy? Maybe they're in debt, or even if they're not, be happy for them. They're having a good time. Someday you'll be there too. You save enough money, you earn enough money, you save enough, you go to Italy. You'll be there eventually. Why are you upset about that? Why does that bother you? Because it touches your ego and your narcissism. So be happy with where you are. And my word of advice is you overcame a lot of odds to be where you are today, and you should at least be proud of that. Anybody who's ever suffered from abuse as a child, be proud of where you are today and that you got here. Even if it's the smallest of things, you should be proud that you're not a drug addict, that you're not homeless on the streets, and or whatever thing that people could end up in. A lot of times people who were abused end up as drug addicts and homeless people and mental illness and locked in a mental institution. Just be grateful and happy with yourself that you are where you are. And so what if somebody got that promotion? So what if somebody goes to Italy? So what if somebody gets married? You accomplished a lot in your life. Be happy with where you are right now and what's going on and whatever you're doing. Like, I enjoy watching Netflix. I enjoy watching YouTube. I enjoy sitting here eating Pringles. Why aren't you?
And it's like blessed, gratitude, like wisdom. It's like, oh, thank God the universe is looking out for me on my vacation to Italy. But it really bugs me because I don't get it. Like, for me, it's not, I love Italy. I mean, Rome is my favorite city, which I didn't think it would be, but it is actually my favorite city. I love the happy stuff, but for me, I also have this like massive dark side, and I drag it around with me everywhere.
The dark side is your narcissism. Okay? I don't drag my childhood around with me. At least I try not to. Part of my problems are manifested through my social anxiety and everything, but it's not like I'm like dragging my past around with me. I'm working on getting better day by day.
And I wish I could just get rid of it, but I can't. And I feel like if I were to post all these happy, amazing things on Instagram, I'd just be an imposter.
Nobody's saying you have to do that. If you want to post your sob story on Instagram, go ahead and do it. Nobody's stopping you. It's just the reason people don't post every little thing that's going on in their life. They don't post their sob story. It's because, they don't, like, nobody needs to know about that. Like, why would you want to share that? Why would you want to, like, upset somebody, you hardly know? I mean, on Facebook, I just post memes. That's all I post most of the time. But because I want to make people laugh. I like laughing. I want to make other people laugh, and that makes me feel good when other people are laughing. So, it just depends. If that's what you want to post, you can do it. But most people don't post stuff like that because they don't want to upset people, and they don't want everybody knowing every little thing about their life.
Because, going back to that whack-a-mole thing, I'm like, hey, look at me, I'm in Italy. And then it's like, these trauma things pop up, and I need to just whack
jealousy.
them down.
That you're having issues with jealousy, lady.
Meanwhile, I'm playing this whack-a-mole and chasing perfection and pretending I'm perfect. And meanwhile, my shame and my trauma are just festering like dog poop.
That's gross.
In a Smith's bag, in a Ziploc bag, in a mason jar that I tie, screw the top on as tight as I can, and then I just carry it around with me, and I'm like, oh yeah,
that's really gross.
A mason jar of poop, no big deal. Pay no attention, look away, avert your gaze. It's not a jar of poop here that I'm carrying around. Just festering. But what if I had taken that crap, and instead of lacking it up and carrying it around with me and trying to pretend that it's not there, what if I had just laid it out in the sun?
For everybody to see,
and let the wind and the rain and the light transform it. It might not have been gone completely, but it would have changed, and it would have become lighter. It would have been transformed.
The grossest analogy I've ever heard, man.
Robert Frost wrote, "The best way out is always through." And I have clung to that through many, many dark nights of the soul. And during trying to work through all this stuff, there was a lot of why me? Why do I have to have all these horrible things happen?
Yeah, we all go through that.
When everybody else is
I went through that.
Blessed. Stuff. I'm like, it doesn't eat my Pringles. And so this girlfriend of mine that I was on the road trip with, we're still friends, even though she still kind of thinks I'm a horrible person.
Well, that's understandable.
She sends me this quote that says, "What if the word victim could be redefined as something closer to hero, so that the path some have tread would spare others from the same?" I thought, okay. Haven't heard that.
She might not think you're a horrible person, but she probably thinks you need help, just like I do.
One before. Hero. Not a victim. Not a survivor. I don't know why I hate that word. I just do. But a hero. So if I'm a hero, I should have a superpower. And if I have a superpower,
You wish you had a superpower.
I guess it's going to be to defeat stigma.
Oh, God. Here we go with the stigma again. Oh, jeez. Every narcissist wish they had superpowers. Every narcissist wish they were a god. Every narcissist wish they were special in some way. Etc., etc., etc. There's no stigma, lady. It's not you against the world, alright?
And as a self-proclaimed superhero, my first act in my fight against...
Yeah. She wishes she was a superhero because she's a narcissist. I mean, but we all have those thoughts too, right? Like, you know, if you had a superpower, what would you have? But, I mean, given that this woman is clearly a narcissist, I'm not surprised here.
Stigma is to introduce an alternative to the cult of happiness.
Oh, right. Cult. Narcissists they love cults. They love cult-like behavior. And at the head of every cult, you'll see a narcissist. Always. They love it. They love to be the center of the attention, which is what she wants here, which is what she's getting. They want to be the center of the attention. They want people to look up to them as a god. That's how narcissists are. That's why they love cults. That's why they try to brainwash people. So it's strange, but I'm not too surprised that she's using the word cult here a lot.
Cult of compassion, all of those bright, shiny, happy things are good. Bring them on over. Totally cool. We love it. But all those ugly, sticky, messy things that we kind of keep out of the cult of happiness, those are accepted too, and they're honored.
Within context, okay? You don't want to be blabbing about all your little problems out there in the world for everybody to hear. You want to call your brother, or your sister, your mom, your dad, whatever, that's cool. Not everybody has to know about your problems, lady.
And they're supported, and they're talked through, and they're...
You should talk through it with a therapist if you feel like friends and family aren't understanding. Or just you don't have anybody to talk to.
Transformed into something that's maybe a little bit closer to authentic happiness. So I can tell my story tonight because I've done a lot of work since I moved to Jackson Hole 3.5 years ago.
I think she has more work to do.
When I just packed it all up and decided...
She's not getting to the root of the problem, which is narcissism, or narcissistic traits is what she needs to work on.
To live the dream, because it is a dream, right? I've done a lot of work, and so to spare you guys, I mean, maybe you're not going to do as much work as I would have done, but maybe you've got some work to do. But to spare you maybe a little bit of time, I can tell you what I learned from all of this. Listening, bearing witness to another's suffering is not a passive practice. It's an act of healing. And I have been healed by some of the people in this room tonight who listened to my story.
Okay, that is not true. Blabbing about your sob story to a bunch of strangers is not the true path to healing, okay? That's a very narcissistic thing to say. What you need is to talk to a therapist to work through your problems. Just talking about your problems to people is not going to solve your problems, all right? I mean, we've all been through abuse, and just telling everybody I know about my abuse doesn't help me in any way. You know, talking about it with a therapist, talking about it with close friends, you know, to get to the bottom of the issue, yeah, I mean, that's therapeutic, but with everybody, strangers, people I don't know, no, that's not going to happen. So she's just, I'm seeing here that she wants that attention. That's all she wants. That's feeding her narcissism. All that attention that she's getting is not helping her. It's not healing her. It's just feeding her ego. It's feeding her narcissism, and that's what she's really out for.
They bared witness to my suffering. They didn't reject me. They didn't tell me it was going to be okay.
Bear witness to what? To hearing you talk about it? How is that bearing witness? It's not like we were there watching the abuse.
They just listened. And they didn't judge.
Nobody judges you, lady. That's in your head. When you tell people, your friends and your family about what happened, they're not judging you. It's like you don't understand their emotions.
It works. The cult of compassion works.
You want a cult of compassion for you, to give you, to listen to your problems, to give you attention. She wants to be, it sounds like she wants to be a cult leader here. She's the cult leader of the compassion cult. Cult of compassion. Oh my goodness.
And all of us here can be heroes. We can work together to defeat stigma. And we can help.
There's no stigma. That's all in your head, lady.
Help people heal. All it takes is an open mind or an open heart if you're right-brained.
What?
Just shut your mouth and listen. And by listening, we can all together change the world. Because the truth is, we are all broken. It's just a question of how much and where. And as Leonard Cohen famously sang, there is a crack in everything.
And as Ollie Williams of the Narcissistic Resistance says, a broken plate is a broken plate. Stop comparing your trauma with other people's trauma. Trauma is trauma.
It's where the light gets in. Thanks for listening.
Oh my God. Alright, so I'm going to read some comments from other people that have watched the video. Apparently I'm not the only one who noticed this weird issue going on with this lady, but I know what it is, and it's narcissism. But here's one. Her presentation really made me not care about her fight. He wrote fight, but I think we know what it means. It came across as insincere and almost mocking on other people's problems. Exactly. She was mocking that poor guy's, overcoming his fear of water. I'm like, I don't care how bad my past was. I'm gonna feel good for a guy who overcame his fear of swimming or fear of his water. That's great. I'd be clapping too, like, oh, good job, I'm not going to compare my trauma with his trauma because his was different, but it's still trauma. And here's another person. That's a reaction to stigma. Sometimes, sure, but most people are just overwhelmed by the enormity of all that sort of statement entails. Exactly. How do you think people are going to feel when you said, oh, I was raped when I was 5? They are horrified by how traumatic such events must have been. Yep. I hope people out there don't think they're experiencing stigma from people due to reaction to such a powerful revelation. Not at all. I don't feel stigmatized at all when I tell people about my past. Because I don't run around telling people that I hardly know about my past. Everybody who's close to me knows about my past already. I don't keep blabbering on about it. Alright, what some people don't realize is that although you may think that somebody else's problems are bad, to them they are. Just as bad as yours are to you. It's not about the experience, but the emotion. Exactly. Trauma is trauma, okay? And he overcame it, and that's good. Sorry. Here's another one. We are all broken, yes. We all have emotional wounds. Some can have more than others, but it will never be a contest. We all have our histories, and that is what makes us who we are now. Exactly. It's not a contest. So to be fine, happy with ourselves now, with the person we are now. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but it's so true. And just like I was saying, she needs to learn to just be happy where she is and everything she's accomplished despite her odds. But she keeps constantly comparing herself with other people. And she needs to stop doing that and really work on that and be happy and accepting of who she is. Alright, so that's my analysis. That's my video. I hope you guys liked it. I'm sorry if I was a bit harsh and a bit blunt about this lady, but I think it's important to really dissect and go deep with people's behaviors and to help you spot this sort of thing going on. Because what if you're sitting there with a friend and they start going, oh, I'm so being bullied. You will then realize that person has experienced trauma in their childhood. They are acting out with a childlike mentality, they need to see a therapist and they need to get help. They're probably struggling with narcissism. So instead of reacting shocked, you can tell that person, hey, I think you really need to get help. Okay? And I think this is, what is more helpful about putting this type of material out there, spotting narcissism in the wild so you can better see it when it comes to you. And I don't want people to end up in a situation I ended up with 3 years of emotional abuse, 3 years of a roller coaster ride with somebody I didn't know the hell was going on. So thank you very much. Please stop by again and have a good day.